Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you a look at a set of filters that works with the Canon EF to RF adapters. This is from Aurora Aperture, and it's amazing to be out ready to take some photos out in nature, and to have along with me not just one filter, but in this little kit here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 filters in here. Various Indy filters and other filters used, and Grad, Indy, etc., etc. And so to have this as an ability to add on to lenses, including lenses that don't have the ability to accept traditional filters, is certainly a huge asset. So the idea here is simple, and that is to utilize this space and the design here to create an area to use rear mount filters. So those filters come in the form of very small and compact filters that are designed to where they can fit into that space here in the actual adapter itself. Now, unfortunately, in this case, it's not as easy a fit as it was in the MC11, just because the MC11 has a little bit more of a natural shelf here. However, as you can see, you can utilize that space there to put the filter in, and then the lens itself will mount in over the top of that. And so now you have a filtered lens, even though in this case, like with this Laowa 12mm f2.8, there is no space for front filtering. Now, as you can see, there's a little slot there, and that's where you can kind of lift with a fingernail and loosen it up. Now here we have a neutral density, graduated neutral density filter. And so as you can see, we've got a metal frame, we've got optical glass in them, and a number of micro coatings on there or nano coatings on there to make them hard and also to make them scratch resistant. So here's a look at a few of the filters and what you can do with them. This is actually the Dusk Filter, and so what it does is it has a bit of a cooling effect. This is a really warm lighting type situation, and so using it allows you to have a little bit more neutral color. It's also very effective for using when shooting astro, as you can see here. Now in this shot, I used the Indy 64 filter, and so that's 6 stops. And so let's just take a look, and for a lens, I used the Sigma 40mm f1.4 Art here. And this is on a Canon EOS R, obviously. So what you can see is that we have really, really great detail. Of course, it helps to start with a sharp lens, but definitely I don't really see evidence of any optical degradation. We've got a really nice looking result. Again, a similar type situation, just a different composition, but allows you to look at it from a different angle on the scene, and as you can see, a really nice result. Now, in this situation, I was obviously shooting directly into the sun. I was shooting at a small aperture, f11, and so you can clearly see the sunburst and then the reflected sunburst. So obviously really bright sun conditions for the shot. And so what is an advantage for rear mount filters, of course, is that because they come so late in the optical chain, there isn't hardly any potential for them to introduce additional flare artifacts. And as you can see, flare resistance has been very good. We can also see that our detail in this scene is really nice. It's a a lovely scene, lots of detail out there, and so a good result there. Now in this situation here, again, shooting with an Indy 64, different kind of lighting conditions, not far from that scene that we just saw, but now the sun is out of the frame, and you can see once again, really, really nice result. I've got a little tiny bit of ghosting artifacts, but that's, I think, just par for the course for the lens. And so again, a really nice result, very crisp, very nice detail, so optical performance is holding up. One final shot with the Indy 64, and so you can see a nice looking scene, just enough additional longer exposure to smooth things out. But I also find that an Indy 64 is a nice filter in this kind of situation for just richening color. And so you can see that our colors are really nicely saturated, and image looks great. So while these weren't taken at the exact same time, there's a few minutes apart, you can see a difference. I swapped out on the right side for an Indy Grad filter. And so this is an Indy 8 graduated. So we've got about 3 stops of exposure that's graduated from the top down. And since these filters will only mount in one direction on the RF mount, what you've got is it's always going to be the top portion of the image basically that gets the graduation. Kind of a limitation of a rear filtering type thing. But what you can see looking at the two images side by side is that you've got definitely a more darkened sky, and so maybe a little bit better balance between the foreground and the sky. In this case, I could recover some of this through post, but again, if you're wanting to get, if it was a brighter scene and much brighter difference between the foreground and the sky, using an Indy 8 filter can make a big difference in, leaving you a sky where you can not have any clipping, not lose any highlights. So finally, let's look at the most extreme filter in the kit. This is an Indy 4000, or a 12-stop filter. And so what we can see here is that, first of all, as we look across the framing here, we can see that we haven't lost detail here, that even in this image with extreme blockage of light, we've still got good detail. If we look down here on the subject here, you can see that detail contrast is held up nicely. And what, of course, this has allowed me to do is to really have a smoothing effect of the water as it ripples down here over these rapids underneath the bridge. And so it allows you to have a contrast between a fixed or a static subject and then the dynamic movement. And so it just gives you a lot of versatility on how to, capture a scene. Here's another, composition. In this case, I shot in a vertical composition, and I switched to a monochrome. Once again, you can see really great looking detail and contrast, and looking down here, detail is held up well. But, a nice dynamic image, all caused by using the Indy filter in a situation where I would not necessarily have been able to use one otherwise. So as we can see, the optical performance of these filters is actually quite good, and I don't really have any complaints on that front. I don't see any optical degradation in terms of the performance, and as I noted, because of their location, I don't think they're going to be introducing any new kind of flare type issues. Beyond that, color casts seem to be very well controlled, and so I feel like I'm getting a very neutral result out of them in terms of color, and so just a lot of good things on that front. And of course, if you are someone, I think in particular, who is just moved to the OSR and you're still using a lot of EF mount lenses, this is a really great way to go. And advantages being that obviously you can bring a lot of filters along in a convenient way, so you have filter options wherever you happen to be on your shoot. It's also nice in that you have just one standard size no matter what lens you're putting on. So you don't have to worry about trying to fit to a front mount. And so in the case of some of the shots that I've taken with the IRIX 15mm f2.4 Blackstone here, it actually can take traditional screw-on filters, but a very large 95mm filter size. Using this rear mount filter means that a lot less expensive, for the filters because of their size. But also it means even if I'm bringing this and then a number of other lenses along, I can get similar and common results across the board. And so I like the concept. It's obviously limited to those that you're actually adapting. If you're using native RF mount lenses, it's not going to help you out. But if you have a lot of EF mount or EFS mount lenses that you're using adapted to the EOS R, it certainly is convenient. Well, let's talk about price as we wrap things up. Prices run anywhere from $48 to around $80-something for these filters. So $48 being kind of a standard UV protection type filter. If you're using the EOS R, I don't know if it's really all that necessary because the EOS R does have the little shutter assembly that comes down to keep the sensor protected already. If you're using an RP, for example, that may be a more advantageous thing to have there, so your sensor is always protected. Moving towards like the more standard Indy type filters, they run around $55 on average a piece, and the Grad filter is a little bit more, the most expensive actually being that Dusk filter. And so anyway, but reasonably priced, and and if you just need one or two, you have a particular purpose that you're looking for, maybe a couple of the Indy Grads, it's really not all that big of an investment, all things considered, and the ways that you can use it. They're currently available at B&H Photo, although it's still very early on. This is just the beginning of them coming to market, and so at the moment they're still kind of a pre-order or special delivery type situation. I suspect they'll also become available through Amazon. I'll throw links down there even if they're not completely active at the moment. I'll set them up in such a way that when stock is in, they will become available to you, so you can check them out there. So at the end of the day, once again, I think that Aurora Aperture has just really done a very clever thing. It's utilizing that shelf that's already there and just making what could be a liability an asset. Using that adapter, why not use it to your benefit and to add benefit to it? And so a pretty clever thinking on their part and a good execution of that concept. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you look in the description down below, you'll find those links there. You can also find linkage there to follow me on social media or to become a patron. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.